So thank you so much for being here. And this is Jesse on the back end with Pure Edge. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our CEO, Chi Kim.
Thanks, Jesse. Mark, we're going to have you come on camera, but before you do, or actually when you do, we're going to just do a little poll that is probably going to just make your skin crawl a little bit based on your new book, Dealing with Feeling. But Jesse, do you want to just put up the poll that we were going to put up, and let's just ask our audience,
Yes, let me see. Here we go.
how are you feeling today? I know you were looking for nuance, Mark, and you'll get into that, but we just thought we'd get this up and ready just so you can roll your eyes. I feel like that's you're on mute. Do you want to unmute yourself, Mark? I want to make sure you have.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said never denigrate your own activity because I'm feeling very rainbowy. Oh, and I'm not allowed to vote because I'm a panelist. See that?
That's right.
That's the first lesson of today's webinar. It's never been a great year on activity. All right, we're going to go ahead and close out the poll. And we have a mix of feelings as well. A lot of sunnies. That's, I think, a good thing. A nice.
No bad emotions. Lesson number 2.
Jesse, thanks so much, and I appreciate you so much. For those of you who are joining today, if you've got anything from Pure Edge, whether it's in a newsletter or on social media, Jesse is the maker of all things great from us, and so I just wanted to thank Jesse personally on this. Also, Marc Brackett, I am so excited to have you here. You've been everywhere all at once. I see you podcasts, and today a brand new article from Vanity Fair got published based on your interview, which we'll share out if you haven't seen it. Jesse will make sure that we send that to you in the follow-up email that is coming. I'm really excited because Mark has written a brand new book. It's called Dealing with Feelings. And if you're here with us today, you're going to get a free copy of his book, but you have to stay
Wow, look at you.
the entire conversation. I like to put the hook in the front, Mark, just so people are, here engaged and hooked in, but mostly I think the book is so important that all the educators who take time to be with us, we want to make sure that they don't have to worry about getting a book from you because we're actually going to send one on us on Pure Edge. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to you so that you can share a little bit about what's in the book. And then
Yeah.
those of you who are here at the end for the last 15, 20 minutes, Mark and I will engage in a short conversation and also have time for a Q&A. So the Q&A box is open for you to ask any questions. The chat box is not is disabled. So I just want to make sure you know that too. So Mark,
Okay.
I'll let you take it from here.
Thanks, Chi, and thanks for your generosity. It's rare that someone in your position would just offer a book gratis to people who attend a webinar. So that's really cool, and I appreciate it. Well, Chi and I have known each other for about a decade. And the reason why I wrote the book was because I knew that she needed strategies to deal with her feelings. So just kidding.
Let's just get that out of the way because it's true.
I'm going to do a little PowerPoint because that's what I do as a professor. And then as she mentioned, we'll get into a conversation. And I thought I would just really, my first book that she was also very generous about supporting was called Permission to Feel. And I don't like to think of Dealing with Feeling as the kind of follow-on book, but it is in many ways. And I just want to tell a little story, about how and why I decided to write a book called Dealing with Feeling. And so I wrote this book, Permission to Feel. I'm proud to say it has now been translated into 30 languages, and I've had the privilege of running around the world talking about emotions and emotional intelligence. And I feel very proud of that work and the center's work and translating that into our evidence-based approach called Ruler. Um, but, the pandemic hit, and we all remember that. And when the pandemic hit, I remember feeling completely overwhelmed and scared and anxious. And I thought, am I the only one? Definitely not. I mean, at some point, I must have had 1,000 emails in my inbox from schools and people around the globe just saying, like, we don't know what to do with our feelings. And at the same time, she knows this story, but my husband's mother, whose name is Irene, she's from Panama, um, came to visit us a week before the pandemic, and we thought she was going to stay for about 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Lo and behold, she stayed in our home for 8 months. And, love my mother in law. I speak Spanish, good things, but I did not anticipate having this person in our home for 8 months. And, I'm an introvert who wakes up every morning having like an existential crisis. And I like to have coffee and like contemplate my work. And I like the alone time. And I didn't have any of that. And some of you may relate to, you have these needs that want to be met. And so, anyhow, it got uglier and uglier, and then she got needier and needier, and I got angrier and angrier. And one day she just looked at me and she goes, "Are you really the director of the Center for Emotional Intelligence?" And I just looked at her and I said, "Not tonight." Um, and things blew up. And but then I went to bed that night and I realized, Mark, you spent 30 years of your life studying emotions and teaching emotional intelligence. And here you are, supposedly an expert who just bluntly sucks at this. And I just couldn't believe it that I knew cognitively that I knew all the strategies, but I couldn't implement them. Just take a moment and think about your own lives. I'm wondering how many of you have had that experience before where, like, I know I should take my deep breath. I know I should think positive thoughts. I know this. And in the moment, you say the thing that you regret, you eat the thing you don't want to eat, or you kind of lock yourself in the bathroom and don't talk to anybody. Can you all relate to that? My hunch is probably yes if you're human. And so then I started doing research on what are people hoping to learn? Like, and how much did you learn about this very specific skill of emotion regulation? And what I found was most people say they learned very little. And so with that said, I'm going to jump right in now. And she did her fun check-in on emotions, using whether it's sunny or rainbowy or thundery. Um, and that's fun. And here is, I'm trying to say this in a way that's not condescending, Chi. Like, good for the fun stuff. Now let's go for the research-based stuff. Anyhow, that's a joke between us. That's now public. But all of you, if you know our work, we have this tool called the mood meter, and it's our tool to help people unpack their feelings. And essentially, it takes all the things that are going on in our heads and helps us put it out into these quadrants to then get more granular or specific. And as you can see, I have highlighted right now all these strong, unpleasant feelings because in our research with educators and others, we find that those are the feelings that people are saying they're feeling a lot of the time these days. A lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, overwhelmed, boredom, tired, exhausted, lonely, depressed. And when we ask people, well, especially educators, how do you want to feel? Nobody says tired, bored, stressed, overwhelmed. They say, I want to feel excited and joyful and appreciated and fulfilled, calm, satisfied. And so this brings up a huge question in psychological science, which is, what are we supposed to do with all the feelings? Am I supposed to like carve those negative so-called emotions out of my head and just like strive to be happy all the time? I've tried that before. I don't know about all of you. When I like, okay, what am I going to do to be happy today? What am I going to do to be happy today? It tends to backfire because it's hard to live up to that. And people ask me all the time, like, well, Mark, what's the ideal percentage of positive versus negative emotions? People used to say, well, it's a 3-to-1 ratio. Research didn't really play out for that. And I think my true answer is there is no proven answer to what you should feel because we're all human and we all experience a wide range of emotions. And what I argue is that we have to understand the value of all emotions. And if you've heard me speak before, what I argue is that both pleasant and unpleasant emotions are helpful for all of these things. So if you're feeling fear, which people, oh my God, I want to be afraid. Well, if there's a fire, you want to narrow your attention and you want to get the heck out of the place where there's a fire. So you don't want to be thinking, what should I be doing now? No, your brain goes into survival mode. So fear in that situation is an adaptive emotion. Happy would be bad. If you're at a party, fear, maybe not so great, but joy and contentment might be good. Same thing for decision making. We think, oh, well, we always have to be positive to make good decisions. That's tricky. It depends what kind of decision you want to make. If you want to make a decision around um, a creative process, well, maybe you want to be in that high energy yellow quadrant. But if you're trying to make a really kind of decision about, like, does that paragraph really say what I want it to say? Is it clear and crisp? You might not want to be so energized. You might want to have lower energy and be even slightly pessimistic, because it's going to help you be more deductive in your reasoning and more kind of narrow in your focus. Relationships. Sometimes you got to tell people how you really feel, and it's not always happy. We always say emotions are signals to approach or avoid. And obviously, how many of you ever worked with someone or live with someone who is emotionally dysregulated? Not fun. I think physical and mental health are obvious, and then performance is a big one. As you all know, the journey to achieving our goals in life is filled with a lot of strong emotions. And no matter how creative you are, no matter how smart you are, if you can't deal with feedback and frustration and anxiety and stress and overwhelm, you're probably not going to achieve your goals. So I call this my money slide. And I joke about that because this is where, when there's pushback from either politicians or pushback from educators or parents, I feel obligated to inform them about the value proposition of emotions and emotional intelligence. And obviously, I could do a whole course just on this slide. So going back to what I said earlier, how much did we learn about this? The answer is nada, nothing. Most of us, how many of you learned a lot about emotions growing up in your house? What is that, 3%? How many of you learned a lot about emotions in your school? What is that, 1%? Most people just did not get an emotion education. And so for years, I ran around the world talking about all the skills, meaning you got to recognize emotions and understand them and label them. And I still do that, by the way. And I still know and think it's important. But I realized a big thing. And this came after writing my book, Permission to Feel, which is that, because when I wrote the book, by the way, that was about my own personal experience, going back to my childhood trauma and my inability to kind of function as a kid. And I had this uncle who created the conditions for me to be my true self. And after I wrote the book, I started doing research to try to understand, well, how many people have, I call it an Uncle Marvin or an Aunt Medea. And what I found in my research was very few people do. Only about a third of people across the United States, and also in other countries, now that I've done research, report having had an Uncle Marvin, meaning someone who created the conditions for them to feel comfortable with their feelings or talk about their feelings. And I've been very curious about the characteristics of these people. And what my research shows is that there are 3 core characteristics: non-judgmental, good listener, and empathy. Think about that for a minute. Think about the people that you love to be around. What are their characteristics? They're not judgmental, uh, confrontational, and avoidant of conversation. They want to be in relationship with you. Now, as a researcher, some people say, well, what's the value proposition of having an Uncle Marvin? Because if it doesn't predict anything, then maybe it doesn't matter. Well, what I'm here to tell you is that it has strong validity. Just looking at the association between someone saying yes or no, and then predicting their life satisfaction, their health, their well-being, what we find is that adults who report having had an Uncle Marvin or Aunt Medea, just all the skills are there. More accepting of their emotions, better at labeling and regulating them. They have greater physical and mental health, and they have higher life satisfaction and purpose and meaning in life. one thing I want to say on top of that, my newest study shows that you actually sleep better at night. Think about that. Just, I mean, I just think that's fascinating to know that someone who created the conditions for us to be with our feelings when we're young literally predicts the quality of our sleep as adults. So when we think about this in terms of co-regulation, like literally that early co-regulatory aspect of emotional intelligence is creating a nervous system, neurons that know how to respond, in that evening time to be more settled. Kind of blows me away, to be honest. So what most people don't realize is that we call that a mindset about feelings, kind of a way of being with other people. But it's also, in my research, the #1 emotion regulation strategy. So this morning I was having a conversation with a neuroscientist friend of mine named Judd Brewer, who writes about anxiety. And we were talking about permission to feel and anxiety and frustration. And I was sharing with him that for, 40 years of my life, 45 years of my life, I was always looking for the strategy, mostly an operation or a pill, that would carve the anxiety out of my head. So that would be like, I'm free. Haven't had that operation yet, haven't found that pill yet. And then as I was writing Permission to Feel and doing the research, I realized, well, what if I just shifted my belief system about anxiety? What if, just what if, I just noticed the anxiety and became curious about it? Oh, hello. Hi today. Welcome, anxiety. Because my mindset was that it's paralyzing. My mindset was that anxiety is bad for you. And then another friend of mine, Tracy Dennis Tawari, who is a neuroscientist about anxiety, or not about it, but researches it, she was saying, well, Mark, tell me all the things that you're anxious about. And I said, well, I get anxious about fundraising for the center. I get anxious about, I want to do good research. And she goes, well, what do you notice that's in common around those things? And I said, "Hmm, well, I guess I really am passionate and care about them." She's like, yeah, that's right. So why would anxiety be bad if it's reminding you about the things that you care so much about? I think that's fascinating as a way of reframing or thinking about it. So my point here, and we'll get to this in a moment, is that I believe, and the research plays out, that the master strategy is permission to feel, that there's no bad emotion, just a shift in our beliefs about feelings. So with that said, obviously there are other skills that we need to learn. We got to be able to recognize our emotions and understand them and put language to them and know how to express them and then finally regulate them. So my big question for you is, well, what the heck is it? How do we define it? And in my research, when I do this stuff, like in presentations, most people say things like controlling your feelings, you know, impulse control, delayed gratification. And I say it's a formula. Now, I did this formula. I felt like when I was writing my book, you got to do something that's, makes you feel smart, Mark. Um, and so I wrote this formula out as I was literally after the book was almost published. I came up with this epiphany that maybe if people had a formula, it would help them map out different strategies. So, hey, Chi, you want to come back on for a minute?
Is it because of the math you want me to show up?
So ER G plus S equals a function of E plus P plus C.
All right.
So
Are you
this is
asking
like the public shaming of China.
emotion regulation?
Good.
G and F. I
I'll
feel
give you the G. The G is goals.
okay.
The S is
Strategy.
strategies.
Yep. Is a
So
function of
just say that out for me. Emotion regulation is
okay. Emotion regulation is a combination of goals and strategies,
great.
which it's a function of
Yeah.
emotions. I'm probably going to say, I'm going to say physical and compassion, but I know that's not correct, but it feels good.
I do like that. Those are things for sure. Emotion is right. The
Yep.
P is person,
Okay.
meaning, you know, we come from different cultures. You come from a Korean culture. I come from a New Jersey culture. We drink coffee. Um, uh, and also personality wise,
Yep.
in terms of introversion, extroversion, conscientious, not, and then C is the context.
Ah, okay.
So when you think about it, you know, that the strategies that we use and the goals that we have to regulate will vary. Like, let me just ask you, when you're dealing with your anger versus sadness, do you do the exact same thing?
No, unfortunately.
That's not unfortunate. It's okay. Because, for me, like I used to say the 90s were my anger years. And so, like, I was just angry all the time. I was mad at my parents. And then now I'm sort of like, Mark, you're 55, let it go. It's like enough is enough with the blaming your mother. Um, and so, like, I don't really, anger is not a big thing for me anymore, but overwhelm is.
Yeah.
And so for me, managing my overwhelm versus anger is completely different. It's like a different country almost.
Yeah.
And then, let me ask you, you have children. And
Three of
so
them. Three
do you
amazing.
notice that your strategies when you're around your kids are different than when you're around friends or by yourself?
Uh, Absolutely. It's just a different connection, right? And
Yeah.
I get I get triggered easily when I'm close to people. My own,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
And so, like right now, for example, if I were overwhelmed, I can't be like, gee, I don't know, this webinar is overwhelming. I need to go for a walk. I'd be like, what the F, Mark? Like,
A little
okay,
less big F
weirdo.
on
Like, okay, weirdo. Um, I can't do that. I have to say, Mark, it's in 45 more minutes. You're gonna get through it. You're gonna be fine. I'll use some self-talk. But after the webinar, if I have time, I may go for a walk to unwind. And so I just think it's important for people to see that we have goals like to prevent an emotion. Like I want to not feel anxious during the presentation, or I don't want to feel anxious during the test. So what can I do in advance to regulate? Or in the moment, I'm feeling overwhelmed. So that's a reduction of an emotion in the moment. And then the strategies are what we're going to get to now. But before we get there, let's just put out a definition.
Yeah.
Emotion regulation is the thoughts and the actions. Those are the strategies that we use to prevent unwanted emotions, reduce the difficult ones, initiate the ones that we want to feel, maintain the ones that we want to keep, or enhance emotions that we want to boost, both for self purposes and other purposes. So, by way of example, for teachers on the call, you are doing a lot of co regulation. You are, in many ways, creating an emotional climate through your facial expression, your vocal tone, and how you're supporting kids when they're feeling stressed or overwhelmed and regulating their emotions. And from an emotional intelligence perspective, it's all in the service of well being, building relationships, and having goals. So, with that said, Cheetah, any of these look familiar to you?
Every day, Mark. That's my life every day.
So, you're
And
not alone.
Netflix in particular.
Uh huh. The these are the common go-to strategies for people: yelling, screaming, avoiding, eating, over drinking alcohol, social media, etc. One of my favorites was a teacher who said, Mark, I just put my feelings in a box before entering school. And I remember saying, I wish that were possible. But guess what? Reality is going to hit in because you can't do it. You can try to suppress, you can try to deny, you can try to compartmentalize all day long, but it doesn't last. Now, in my other studies with teachers talking about kids these days, here's what we find. They're really struggling with impulse control, excessive crying and shutting down, blaming and scapegoating, pouting, withdrawing, gossiping, and meanness, drugs, and alcohol on the high school level. And so essentially we've got from children to adults a lot of emotional dysregulation. And so the question is, what are the strategies and how did we get here? And so you all get a chance to read this. This is chapter 2 in the book. This is literally the sections of that chapter. And so I won't go into any detail right now, but I'll just say up front, I'm put this in the strength-based framework. We got to start valuing how people feel. B, we got to see that these are really valuable skills. C, we got to teach them at home. D, we got to teach it at school. E, we got to move away from quick fixes and move towards real learning of healthy strategies. We got to have a prevention mindset as opposed to an intervention mindset. And to be frank, we need government and institutional support for this. If I had it my way, it would be required by government officials to have checklists for how their policies impact children's healthy development.
Mm.
So the strategies are all here, and I thought, we can go through these, one by one, maybe during our conversation. The first one was kind of that permission to feel, shifting our beliefs. The second one, these are all chapters, by the way, in the book that you'll get to read, is about labeling emotions precisely. There's a lot of good research which shows that when we label our emotions, there's a pathway to regulating them. Something that your organization, does extraordinarily well is helping people quiet their minds and their bodies through mindfulness exercises and breathing exercises. And we know the research is there to support that. The fourth is we got to know how to deal with our criticism, our self-criticism, and move into a more productive self-talk. The fourth goes back to permission to feel, but now it's with an other orientation. It's saying, oh, I got to pay it forward. I got to make sure that every kid in my class thinks of me as their emotional ally. And remember that an emotional ally doesn't mean someone who fixes other people's problems. It means that you show up with empathy, compassion, good listening skills, and non-judgment. We got to optimize our regulation budget, meaning that we got to get good sleep. We got to eat good foods or healthy foods or foods that help us, have good brain power. And then we need to get moving because we all know that that matters. And then the last chapter is really about helping people. My vision, by the way, for this book, which is I haven't shared with you, is that we redefine what it means to be successful. I think that most of us were brought up thinking like, oh, if I get into Yale, I'll be successful. I've met a lot of kids over the last 23 years. Not everyone achieves their dreams. The second, or if I make a lot of money, once I get the big house or the fancy car, we know from the research, not true. You can drive the fanciest BMW or Mercedes-Benz, and you still have to live with yourself. Or it's always this kind of when this happens or if this happens, I will feel happy or I'll have achieved success. And I actually think that if we redefine success as being a human that is skillful at dealing with their own and others' feelings, it would change a lot of our society. That if I identify as a person who is emotionally intelligent, it just changes the way I operate in the world in terms of my being a husband, in terms of parenting, in terms of leading, in terms of friendships. And so that's the ultimate goal. And just a few things for everybody that's in the book, you'll hear about them in a moment, is that I've co-created this app called How We Feel that has now been downloaded by 3 million people. We just
Amazing.
finished a study.
3 million?
I'm sorry?
3 million?
3 million.
Amazing.
Incorporates lots of different activities, including mindfulness exercises and breathing exercises, and beautiful design. We have the most creative people I've ever seen actually designing our activities. So check that out. We have proven now in a big research study that just in using the app for 30 days increases your well-being. I have this web series that is also free. I shared this morning, Dr. Judd Brewer, who is one of the world's leading experts on anxiety. Yesterday, I interviewed a very famous Philippine actress named Liza Soberano about her life story being in foster care and how that impacted her development and just her journey now to being one of the most followed actresses in the Philippines. And so I'm interviewing both people with very interesting lived experience and also the experts to keep this kind of entertaining, but also informative. So please check that out. And the lastly is, I think, Chi, you posted about this, so thank you for that. We'll make sure that if you are here today and you want to really go deeper with me on this journey, you can just sign up for the book club and just let in that where it says, upload your receipt, you just say, nope, I got that book from Chi, and you'll be all set.
It's
So I'm
good.
up
It's
there.
Cheese Book Club then, that we get to rename that.
Yeah, I'll have you as a guest. So let me stop there, and Chi, let's chat.
Yeah, and so Mark, I just wanted to make sure that folks know also at the end of your book, there's a workbook, so you can actually go
Yeah,
through some of the skills and practices. And really, it's a self-reflection tool, right?
exactly. I think that we go through periods of our lives. Like it's funny because one of the things that I did, one of the things that I started doing, I was always physically active. I did a lot of yoga. I was a martial arts teacher for 25 years. And then the pandemic hit and I became a Thai food exerciser. Can I have another pad Thai? No, give me some curry. And I didn't feel so good about myself. And I started working out a lot more. Um, and I was making the connection between um, working out and emotion regulation. And I realized it was very similar in terms of like, I don't know why I'm bringing this up right now. I had a thought and I dissipated. But the idea that my idea came from working out about emotional intelligence or emotion regulation being part of your identity. Because think about it, if you were someone who like an Olympic person, you identify as someone who is, athletic. You identify as someone who eats healthy because your body and mind rely on that for your success. Well, what if we just shifted that to having a mindset that I'm like a really skillful person in the world? It would dramatically change, I think, all of our relationships.
Well, I think really the core of what you're saying is it takes practice, right?
Yeah.
Anything, whether it's working out or being an athlete, being an emotion scientist, it takes
Yeah.
and a
Uh,
lot.
Now, now I know what I was getting at. Completely just flubbed that last piece. Um, I just made it up. I was like, let me just fill in the space because I couldn't remember what I was going to say. But you reminded me about the reflection at the end of the book. And so now I did that for 4 years. I felt like, Mark, you're in great shape. Like you've been the best shape ever. And now the stress with the book coming out,
Yeah,
I noticed myself like I can't really track as much. I skipped a little workout here and there.
yeah,
And so my point is that like in the wheel that I created with those strategies,
right.
you're gonna ebb and flow. Like they're gonna be, just because like, yes, my nutrition is great now, it might slip. My self-talk might be like, Mark, I found, it was funny when I was interviewing Jewel back a few months ago or a year ago now for my podcast, the singer. She's like, I've come to an epiphany, Mark. I feel good when everything is going my way.
Yeah, that is
I was
quite
like,
an epiphany.
oh, that's interesting. But it's actually like quite interesting to realize that like when life is going the way everything like goes the way you want it to, like you don't really need to regulate.
Well, the thing that I'm noticing much more as I get older. So I'm 57, so I feel like I have some choices. So your book right now is the part about co-regulation for me is I have choices of who I want to be around.
Yeah.
Right. And I think when I was younger, I felt like I had to be in these situations where I didn't have any agency over where I was going to be, who I was going to be with. And now,
Hmm.
especially with the world the way that it's working, like I have choices of who I want to co-regulate with, right? You're in groups sometimes.
Yeah.
It's just fun people that just make you laugh all the time. You make me laugh all the time. And I think that part, right, for me, just feels good at that level.
Does.
But there are places and times where, whether you're in a meeting or in a group, especially, I've been in schools for so long as well, we can bring a certain level of energy that
Mhm.
you know, just is contagious in the room, whether it's good or bad, but there is definitely a contagion of some kind of energy and emotion. And I think in those ways, we have so much control over how we show up that I feel like your book really gives you a little bit of a pathway of identifying those feelings, being in the moment. So I'm just really excited to make sure that folks get
Thanks.
an opportunity to read it as well.
Another way to put it too, which
Yeah.
is what you're making me think about, is that there are people who kind of fill your budget, and there are people who deplete it.
Yeah. Aren't they
It's
called vampires, Mark? I feel like
I'm
a
sorry.
typical term is vampires, emotion vampires.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And that they're not fun to be around. And I think this is a big deal for kids too, because they get stuck in relationships. I mean, so many of us have been stuck in relationships that are unhealthy.
Right.
And so, uh, teaching this early on in terms of like evaluating, is that person lifting me up? Is that person supporting my well-being, or is that person depleting it?
Yeah, and I think right now too, it's so amplified because feelings are heightened right now in every aspect of our lives, whether it's on media or, in life in general. Um,
Hmm.
and I think you work a lot with social media companies. And I think one of the things that I've noticed is when I put my social media down, life is pretty good. I
Hmm.
get to, right, get to walk my dogs. I get to be with my kids, my friends, my colleagues. As soon as I start to see what's happening sort of on the bigger scale, uh, every emotion that you can think of that is negative starts to like pop up. um,
Totally.
yeah, and
And it
it's
happens
manage-
subconsciously.
yeah.
And it's not even like, it's just like you start mentally rehearsing and kind of even the negative stuff that you're hearing on the news or scrolling on.
Right. I think you talked about being overwhelmed, right? And sometimes life happens and you you know, get to own it, live it, and then sometimes you just feel like, wait, I can't even deal. There's way too much going on. And I think what you do in the book, especially, is just sort of outline like where we are, where we want to be, how do you get there, right? Some
Mhm.
strategies and practices. But it never is, it's never preachy about how, you must do these things. It's really a choice and an option of a journey. Um,
That's important, actually, that you're bringing that up because, I never forget, I gave this talk to a bunch of police officers in Virginia a number of years ago, and they did not know like some like guy from Yale University was going to come in and teach them about feelings for 3 hours. And I walked in this room and, with all respect to police officers, they were not anticipating this experience, nor was I. And so it was like this big, and Mark teaches people about how to feel and have permission to feel. And I was like, God, can we change this intro? Um, like remind everybody that Mark's a fifth degree black belt in Hapkido. Anyhow, and this one police officer in the room, he's like, Doc, very interesting, but what's the one strategy that works? Just give me the one strategy. And I felt pressure, in that moment. What I wanted to say was, it doesn't really work that way. There's not, one strategy. Like some people are comforted by breathing exercises. Some people get a little, flustered from them. Some people are like really enjoy at the end of a long day socializing. That's not me. I like to I don't mind being with people. I just don't want them to talk. I like the presence, but I just don't want to have to be like, my head is so full by the end of the day. I just have no more bandwidth. Other people though are very different. They're the extroverts in the world. They want to go to a sports bar and like chat, and that's okay. There's no right or wrong. It's kind of this journey of finding what works best for you.
I think what you're identifying really is just noticing, right? We talk a lot about, at least at Pure Edge, when we present to educators, is just
Hmm.
noticing. We're not going to be life changing or change your life in that noticing, but actually just pausing and noticing is when you can start to redirect, whether it's
Yeah.
redirecting a feeling or identifying, an instance where you might want to just stop before you make a decision. But the noticing is probably the most important thing. And I think that's what you've been identifying really throughout since I've known you. And those are those little meta
Yeah.
moments we talk about, right?
Yeah. And I think part of the reason, when I was doing the research to write the book, I just asked people like, what do you think is important? What would you like to learn? And that's how the buckets came up. People didn't think about their mindset so much. I don't think people naturally are inclined to think my feelings about my feelings are influencing in my life. I'm like, well, that's more scientific-y. But a lot of people talked about like not knowing how they really feel.
Right.
A lot of people talked about not knowing how to calm their minds and their bodies. a lot of people talked about like they're just so negative about themselves. There's always I'm such an idiot, or I'm a moron, or I'm not good enough. A lot of negative self-talk. A lot of people talked about this idea of having support systems and the people that they want to be around. People talked about feeling like depleted of their energy. And then my own work, um, the idea of the meta moment came from this idea. A student wrote an article about me a long time ago in the newspaper at the university when I first taught my course, and it was, Mark, we have now Yale has a feelings master. I'm like, oh yeah, yeah. But then I started realizing, like, what would life be like if I were the Yoda of emotional intelligence? Mark would not be so triggered by the students who are like, Professor Brackett, I've got a question, but I don't think you're gonna know the answer. Mark Brackett wants to like wring their necks. Um, but the feelings master is like so creative. It's like, wow, that was interesting. Say more. That's gonna help you get an A in my class.
I I think honestly you're right. Every one of those little when you're showing the slide, like you could teach a course on every one of those things,
Yes.
and frankly, you do teach courses on all those things. Um, I know our whole goal at Pure Edge is to just bring folks like you, experts in their field, have a little gift for those educators who spend their entire lives, dedicating to others, and just kind of these little moments of learning and pockets of, maybe one or two things and strategies that might change their life for the better. And I hope that today, with you being here, that there's just a little bit of a, curiosity, a little window open for those who aren't familiar with your books or with you. And for those
Mhm.
who are, they get a gift of your, experience and the book. I just wanted to name that again. It's Dealing with Feeling. It's going to be everywhere. As I shared, Mark actually has an article that was just published today in Vanity Fair. Was amazing. Got New York Times on Friday. I think Time Magazine on Monday. He'll be on Fox and Friends tomorrow. And really,
No, next week. Yep.
next week. I apologize.
That's okay.
One of the reasons I'm bringing these things up is because emotions are universal. And
Mhm.
I'm going to name it because I would be remiss not to, that emotions are also getting attacked, right?
Yeah.
Right, to do certain things in schools. Um, what kind of advice would you give, Mark? Because you really are sort of at this closing last word. What kind of advice would you give to educators who really want to make sure that they're providing a space in their classrooms and in their schools, a place where every human being belongs?
Mhm.
But they're not allowed to say certain words, right? Things are banned at this point. What advice would you give to educators to sort of move forward with what we know the research states?
What I would say is that, I know that people, there are buzzwords that are, on the canceled lists, and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, and also I want to say something important about this is a new thing I came up with. Just, it's not in the book, but I thought about it recently in an interview, which is that the confusion between the gift of self-awareness and self-indulgence.
Mm,
And I think what has happened is that some people who are against this work have seen bad implementation. And there is bad implementation, as we all know. And, we should not be asking kids all day long how they're feeling. Like, I don't, I mean, imagine if we had this happen even with our own program. Like, there was somebody misinterpreted the training. And so this is like a middle school, so 7 periods in a day. At the beginning of every single class, how are you feeling? Plot yourself. And then by the end of the day, the kids were like, they hated our program. And I'm like, they don't hate it, they hate the implementation.
right.
And so know that self-awareness is a gift, and that, you as a teacher, just checking in on a tool like the mood meter on the app or just in your head, the moment you enter into your classroom and just say, how am I feeling right now? Am I in the right emotion place to do this lesson or to, run this activity? Yes or no? No? Okay, well, what might help me get there? That doesn't take 2 hours. That took 10 seconds. And the same thing applies to our students. Just asking kids to take a moment. How are you feeling? Are you in the right place? Are you ready for this math lesson? Are you not ready? If you're not ready, and you need a little help, raise your hand. I'll come over and give you some ideas, or talk to a neighbor. Kids are amazingly creative at generating their own emotion regulation strategies. And so we don't have to be the knowers. We don't have to be those resident psychologists and therapists in order to check in or help kids check in. We just have to create the space for them to build a little awareness, help them improve their vocabulary. I don't think anyone would argue, no matter what, no matter how political, um, that helping kids have language is a bad thing.
Right.
And so just, helping kids check in, have that feeling word, and then think about what they need to be the best possible learner. I think I'll say one last thing about that, which is that oftentimes the sentiment is that we're prying into these kids' lives, and that's like we're trying to, like, somebody said recently that teachers are like, tell me more about why you're depressed and tell me what happened over the weekend that made you feel so anxious. That is not,
Yeah.
nobody, if somebody's doing that, that's not what either one of us would ever recommend.
Correct.
And so, like, just let's wipe that out, let's clean it up.
Yeah.
And what I would do to keep this highly relevant to classroom experiences and culture and learning is say, everyone, we're about to start our lesson on algebra. I want you to just check in. How are you feeling about that right now? Are you ready for learning or you're not ready for learning? Are you feeling energized? Are you feeling kind of a little yikes? Just, and, is that going to help you with the lesson, or is that going to get in the way of the lesson? If it's going to get in the way, think about what you might need to help you be more present. We can do a breathing exercise. You can talk to your friend for 2 minutes. You can journal, just
Right.
whatever you need. And let's take 2 minutes for that.
Right.
Not 20 minutes, but 2 minutes. And so
We're
these quick check-ins are what I think are extraordinarily helpful for kids. It gives them another thing I want to say, by the way, without getting too controversial, is I saw a recent Instagram post where a psychologist was saying the following, that these emotional check-ins, she believes, lead to mental illness.
Oh, yes.
Whoa, what's that one about? And I think it's misguided. And the point is that the mindset that that person had was that when you find out how a kid is feeling, and let's say it's sad or frustrated, and you then try to offer that kid a strategy, that what you're doing in that moment is you are implicitly telling the kid that you can't handle their feelings and that you need them to regulate because you can't handle it. That is simply not true. The goal is to help that kid be the best possible learner. Whether you are conscious of it or not, kids are having feelings from the moment they walk in the door. The example I gave recently was in physical education. I was a kid who was not the one that's, the big tough guy now. I was the kid who was always picked last.
Mm.
The shame, the fear, it was so overwhelming to like not be chosen to be on the team.
Yeah.
Nobody did anything about it. So if I were a parent of that child, I would be devastated to know that my child was sitting in shame all day
Yeah.
and not in a classroom where a teacher understood how feelings influence learning and mental health. And so I just think that we have to educate people on the value of this work and make the real strong connection that how our kids feel in classrooms is driving their attention and their learning.
Well, and I think that it reminds me of all the great teachers that we know, right? The ones that just notice you got a haircut, or notice you got a new pair of
Yeah,
shoes. Just noticing in small ways actually does a huge amount for a connection, and just being able to, that you feel seen,
completely.
right? You completely feel seen, even
And
and
safe.
about their emotion.
Yeah.
Yeah, and safe for sure. I hope that this conversation for you, Mark, I always love spending time with you.
Yeah,
Two
ditto.
things to note. Everyone, there's a link that Jesse put into the chat box that shows you that you get your free copy of your book delivered to your home. Also, if you are part of the book group, if you'd like to sign up for Mark's book group, that is free. There's no charge for any of these things. So we want to make
Yeah.
sure that you know that too. So cost zero. And also,
Fun
if you
chat.
if you are interested at all You know, the app is free, all the things, and also all the resources at Pure Edge are free as well. So please just know that those are all available to you. We are here to sort of be a part of the community. And I just want to make sure that for those of you who took the time to join us today, we're so grateful and we hope that you enjoy the book. And also, this is really important. We've had several authors on this webinar at different times at Pure Edge. And what I want to make sure is when you get your book, the one thing that I need you to do is I need you to go on Google and actually, or Amazon, I should say,
Mm,
Amazon, and actually rate the book. There's a whole system and mechanism, but if you love Mark's book when you read it, please
thank
make
you.
sure that you go on Amazon and rate the book. It's super important and it just helps elevate the importance of emotions. And lastly, we do hope, I'm with you, Mark, we hope that success is actually measured by the way people are able to regulate, be able to share their emotions and be true champions and leaders, because they have lots of skills that you are promoting throughout the world. So, so grateful for you. It's been so
You
fun,
too.
and I'll see you soon. Thanks
Thanks,
everyone
Jake.
for joining us.